been 3 days. I can still see the pain, the strain, the blood that drained that day at Calvary. They pierced his hands, his feet, for all to see. This man, this king, this Jesus. This tangible passion, this relentless abandon, this love, this hope was gone. But Jesus wasn't finished yet. Today the stone's been rolled away. The grave has lost its claim of victory. Death has given way to life, to grace. Our sin replaced, erased by mercy. Hope is alive. Mercy can thrive, revive, bring to life the hearts of man. Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen.
Welcome back, Sunday morning. It's great to have you here again. Jesus is risen, the culmination of the Easter story, the most important part. He was resurrected so that we could have resurrected life with him.
Yeah, so stoked that you guys are joining us again today. Hope that you've had a great time so far. We've still got lots of fun stuff planned, so stick around.
Fun stuff, highlights. What's your favorite part of Easter camp?
Probably I'd have to go with worship. Honestly, it's my favorite time. Just so many good memories in worship. Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I can't help but agree, worship. But because you said that, I'll say tribal wars. Competition, especially in big groups. I love seeing the leaders get into it and compete.
Yeah.
So yeah, competition for sure, tribal wars.
So good. Speaking of highlights, we've got a highlight reel for you guys, so check it out.
Take this plane to lay it. I was only waiting for you, you know. For you, you know. I stayed in here for ages and felt the sunlight fading on you, you know. On you. But it's the way we say goodbye. It kills me now, it's the way we say goodbye. It kills me now and I won't look back in time. 'Cause darling, it's just the way we say goodbye. Take this plane to lay it. I heard the music fading with you, you know.
Satan fall like lightning. I saw darkness run for cover, but the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Still the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. Oh, my praise belongs to you forever. Come on, let's sing. This is my testimony, from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, and I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Come together, sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed in water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son and Father. Our God will finish what He started. It's true. Our God will finish what He started. Oh, this is my testimony, from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, and I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Yeah. From death to life. Oh. Come on, let's sing this out. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. You're not done. Greater things still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things still to come. Oh, I believe. Come on. If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greater things still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Oh, greater things still to come. Oh, I believe. There's greater things ahead of me. This is my testimony, from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, and I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. I'm alive. This is my testimony, from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story, and I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Yeah. From death to life. I've got a reason to say. I'll cast my mind to Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. I see His wounds, His hands, His feet, my Savior on that cursed tree. His body bound been sealed by every stone. Messiah still and all alone. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. Then on the third break of dawn, the Son of Heaven rose again. Oh, trample death, where is your sting? The angels roar for Christ the King. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. He shall return in robes of white. The blazing sun shall pierce the night, and I will rise amongst the saints, my gaze transfixed on Jesus' face. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our we sing. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. And oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. Oh Lord our God. Oh Lord our God.
Our next speaker is the lead pastor of Golden Sands Baptist in Papamoa. He's a brilliant communicator. One of my favourite memories of him is standing up in front of a loud crowd singing Disney songs. I think you're really going to enjoy what he has to offer. Let's hear it for Colin.
It's Easter morning, and today billions of people from different languages, cultures, ethnicities, and class will be gathering together today to celebrate this day. And often on Easter, we often talk about the what that we're celebrating. Many of you who've been on this journey, and you've probably come to Easter camp times before, and you've probably been in churches before, people will often tell you what we're celebrating. Well, it's easy. Easter is the day that Jesus rose from the dead. He came back to life. And then we leave it there. And millions of people know the what of Easter, but one of the things we don't talk about is the why of Easter. Why is it that statement, that 2,000 years ago a man came back from the grave, is so important? Why is it so life-changing that thousands of years later we are still celebrating and remembering this day? Because the truth of the story, once you understand it, makes today the most important day in all of human history. But to understand Easter, I want to take us back to that Easter morning. And I want to take us back to one person who lived through that Easter morning. I want to take us to a guy named Peter. See, for Peter, Easter morning was not a day of celebration. It wasn't a day of joy. Easter morning was dark. It was the darkest moment of the darkest day that he had been through. See, Peter was one of Jesus' closest disciples. Peter was a fisherman. He was uneducated. He wasn't from the highest, elite class. And he was brash and he was loud. But for some reason, Jesus had picked him. One day out on his fishing boat, Jesus called to him and said, "Come and follow me." And Peter had had his life transformed by this Jesus. Peter had a front row seat to all of the stories that Jesus had done. And yesterday we talked about how Jesus' mission was to bring the clear skies of the kingdom of God to a world filled with smog. And Peter's life had been transformed by that message. And he had seen this movement grow. He had seen Jesus do miracles and healings. He'd gotten a front row seat to some of the most incredible things anyone had ever seen. And as it was going, Jesus' movement was rising in popularity, and Peter must have been chuffed about it. All of Peter's dreams and his validation and his hopes were coming true. In fact, only a week ago, when they had entered Jerusalem, a whole city had gone out to give a parade for Jesus. Jesus' movement started out with the fringe, the sick, the poor, the tired, but now the elite, the ruling class, the leaders, the wealthy, the well-connected, they were showing up. And Peter had thought, man, something's about to happen. Jesus is really going to do something. We finally are in the position to start making some change. And Peter had gotten a lot of validation out of that journey. Now, Peter was always a bit of a showboat. He was what you'd call a peacock, which was at any opportunity, he would insert himself into the story and try to say something brave and powerful to make himself seem important. In fact, funny story, Peter's the only person in the Bible that we have where God and Jesus both tell him to shut up when he's talking when he shouldn't be. So look, if that makes you feel any better, the next time you're in your youth group or you're hanging out with your leaders and you're talking too much and they tell you to be like, hush up, stop talking, at least you're not as bad as Peter, who had to get told by two members of the Trinity to shut up and stop talking. But Peter got a lot of validation and meaning off of being one of Jesus' followers and being at the center of this movement. And he was excited for the possibilities of what it could be. But as Easter approached, all of that changed. See, at the height of their movement and at the height of their journey, Jesus starts saying things that are really uncomfortable. He starts talking about how he's going to die, about how he's going to be betrayed, about how his life is going to be ended in a brutal and terrible fashion. And Peter was frustrated by that, saying, Jesus, why would you talk like that? Why would you do that? But Jesus kept on saying this is going to happen. And in fact, one night, Jesus was going on about it. Just a couple of nights before Easter, they gathered together for one final meal. And Jesus was again saying, I'm going to be killed. You better get ready. And Peter had had enough. And he says to Jesus, stop talking like that. That's not going to happen. He was peacocking. He was puffing himself up, saying, that'll never happen. We're never going to leave you. I'm never going to leave you. But Jesus did something that was brutal to Peter. Jesus looked at Peter in his eyes and said, Peter, the truth is, before this night is over, 3 times you're going to deny me. And that shut Peter up. And that from that moment, everything changed. Everything that had been moving up suddenly takes a left turn and starts falling apart. Before you know it, they go out to a garden to pray, and guards show up. Jesus is arrested. Peter starts peacocking. He pulls out his sword and goes to fight. And Jesus actually stops him and says, Peter, put it away. Not now. We got to let this happen. And everything starts to crumble for Peter. His world starts to fall apart. Jesus is arrested. He's taken in to a trial that is totally unfair. It's corrupt. He was guilty before he even walked through the door. and things crumble even more for Peter. In fact, while that trial is going on, Peter sneaks in because he wants to see what's happening and he wants to be there with Jesus. And there in that trial, people start to look at him and they say, Peter, I know you. You're one of Jesus' followers, aren't you? And Peter, who spent his whole life peacocking and showboating and trying to compensate and show how important he is, the fear and the anxiety begins to grip him. He wants to be this leader. He wants to be important. He wants to be just like Jesus, but he is crippled by fear and anxiety. And the words that come out of his mouth is, I don't know him. And then another person a few minutes later comes up to him and says, aren't you one of those followers of Jesus from Galilee? And again, the panic and the anxiety rises within Peter, who's supposed to be the leader, and he freaks out and says, no, I don't know the guy. And a third time, someone comes up to him and says, I know you. You're one of his followers, aren't you? And it's again, all of the fear and the anxiety that Peter's been carrying, the insecurity that he's been compensating for years, just bubbles out in a way that he can't control. And despite his best intentions, he says, I don't know the man. And there, Peter remembers Jesus' words to him, before the night is done, 3 times you will deny me. And the man that Peter thought he was gone. As much as he tried to showboat as this brave leader and he tried to compensate with his masks and his bravado, in that moment he knew he was much more broken than he ever thought. So his self-image had collapsed. And then pretty soon everything else in his world collapsed. Jesus is declared guilty. He's taken before all the leaders. He's whipped, he's beaten, and then he is killed, nailed to a tree, crucified. And in that moment, the Jesus movement is done. Because you don't get crucified messiahs. You don't get great leaders who die criminals' deaths. And in that moment, everything from Peter's world was crushed. It was dark. And on that Easter morning, he was in a dark, dark place with no light. Now, whenever I think about Peter's journey up to this point, I cannot help but think about black holes, which I know sounds random, but go with me. Now, black holes are these anomalies in the universe. Black holes are what happens when you get an infinitely amount of heavy space crammed into a small, small location. And if something gets heavy enough and compact enough, it begins to create this infinite gravity, where it gets infinitely heavy and it starts to suck everything towards it. And in fact, at the center of our Milky Way, the thing that spins our galaxy around is a giant black hole that keeps everything rotating around its gravity. And every black hole has this point called the event horizon. It's the moment where the gravity comes close enough that if you cross that event horizon, there is no coming back. As soon as you move past it, the gravitational pull of that black hole will suck you in and there is no return. And scientists talk about how the gravity of that black hole is so strong, obviously light can't escape it, but it actually pulls things apart as it gets pulled in. So if you fell into a black hole, the gravity would start to pull you apart atom by atom until you become a long string of atoms lined up together, circling around this black hole in a process that, I kid you not, is called spaghettification. Now, I wish I could have been in the room where the scientists were trying to describe what this process is. Well, the black hole, it pulls you apart atom by atom because the gravity is so strong. What do we call it? And there's somebody eating his lunch there. Spaghettification? Brilliant! Sounds sciencey enough. But that's what happens, is you get pulled in and you get pulled apart. And the one fundamental truth about a black hole is that anything that crosses that event horizon is not coming back. No light, no life. It is crushed into a darkness from which there is no return. And Peter and Easter is a story of what happens when you cross an event horizon. Peter, his whole life had been about bravado and holding this image of being this brave leader. But in that moment, in that denial, he crossed over this event horizon and he had to realize a truth about himself that was deeply unsettling, which is that he is broken and scared and insecure, something he'd spent his whole life trying to avoid. And Jesus and his movement crossed over that event horizon. There is no coming back from death. There is no coming back from crucifixion. The reputation was gone. The leadership was gone. Jesus was gone. Easter morning is a dark, dark morning, because it is what happens when you cross the event horizon. And each of us have black holes that we spend most of our life running from. We have things that we think about that we think, if that ever happened, that would be the end. If people ever found out this about me, if people ever knew the truth about what I was really like, if that person ever leaves me, if this ever changes, if I ever lose that opportunity, if that thing falls apart, if that happens, then it's the end. And most of us spend our entire lives using all of our energy, our masks, our coping skills to avoid crossing that event horizon, because we think if that happens and if we go there, there is no coming back. That's the end of our story. But Easter is powerful. And the reason why Easter is so important, and it's the most important story that you'll ever hear, is because when Jesus on that morning comes back, something happens that has never happened before in human history. Something that was thought impossible begins to take form. On the other side of that event horizon, in the crushing weight of the black hole, light begins to appear for the first time. And Peter hears about it first in rumors. The women come back from the tomb saying, Jesus is gone. Peter runs there himself and he only finds clothes, but no body. And he begins to wonder about what's happening. Light is beginning to spark from a place where there was no life. And then one day, Jesus shows up in the room with Peter, a man who had crossed over the event horizon full of life. In fact, Jesus was more alive than he'd ever been. His whole body radiated this energy that people couldn't even fully describe. Something had happened that had never happened before, which is that point where we think nothing can live. If we go there, everything will die. Jesus himself went there and began to bring life from it. And Peter is transformed by this story. A little bit later, Peter's out one morning fishing, doing the thing that he's always done. And even though Peter knows that Jesus has come back, he still has the shame of the denial hanging over his shoulders. And he thinks, I'm never going to be that leader. I'm never going to be that person again. And one day while he's out fishing on a beach, he hears Jesus calling to him. And Peter leaps out of the boat and he swims back to shore and he encounters Jesus face to face. And I can't help but wonder about the shame that Peter carried in that moment. Having to look the guy in the eye that you betrayed, that you denied. Peter was not the brave leader that he wanted to be. He was a broken man and he thought, I'm never going to come back from this. I denied him 3 times. And Jesus looks at him and he says, Peter, do you love me? Peter says, yeah, I love you. And Jesus looks at him again and says, Peter, do you love me? And Peter again says, yes, Lord, I love you. And again, a 3rd time, Jesus says to Peter, Peter, do you love me? And at this moment for Peter, everything comes to the fore. His brokenness and his shame, his insecurity, everything over that event horizon comes out into the open with Jesus. And he weeps and he says, Lord, you know I love you. And it pours out in this sadness and tears. And Jesus smiles at him and says, so Peter, feed my sheep, lead my people. And from that moment, Peter himself, having crossed over the event horizon with Jesus, encounters the life of Jesus and is transformed into the leader that he always wanted to be. But not because he avoided it, it's only after going through it that he begins to experience the life that Jesus has for him. And this is why the Easter story is so powerful. And this is often the thing we get wrong about Easter, is we think that when Jesus rose from the dead, that means that he's going to save us from ever entering the black hole. We think that because God is here and he's going to save us, he'll help us, give us the energy that we need to avoid those moments of death, to avoid those event horizons that we think if that happens to us, if we cross that point, there's no coming back. And often in the way that we pray and the anger that we have towards God, we're often asking God, why do you let bad things happen? Why did you let people fall over that event horizon? But when we ask that, we're asking the wrong question. See, God is not a God that helps us avoid death. Easter is not a story about how God will just make everything magically better. That is a gospel of avoidance, and that is not what Jesus was about. The power of Easter is that when we cross over the event horizon that we think is going to be the end, that is just the beginning point to life. The story of Easter is not about avoiding death. The story of Easter is about how God has transformed it and conquered it. See, that when Jesus went over that event horizon, when he died on that cross, he went to the place that we think there is no life, and then he came alive there and made it the beginning point of a whole new story. Peter thought that if people found out how insecure he was, if they found out how scared he was, that would be the end of his story. But Jesus intentionally leads him over that event horizon. He draws him over it so that Peter has to face the very things he's most afraid of. And the power of the gospel is that those things no longer have power over him anymore. As he crosses over that moment, the things that he think will kill him, the things that he think will end him, become the beginning point to life and life abundantly. God is a God not of avoiding pain, but of resurrecting life from it. And the reason why Easter is so important, the reason why we celebrate it still thousands of years later, is because Jesus gives each and every one of us hope. Hope not to avoid the things that we're scared of. Hope not to just try and make it and fake it till we get through, but hope that says, even if all the things that happen to you that you are most afraid of happen, even if people find out those things about you, even if those people leave you, even if those things that you were terrified to bring to the surface, if they come to the light, the power of the gospel is that those things that you think will bring you death, when Jesus touches them, they bring you life. I mean, can you imagine the freedom that comes from people who know that the thing that they're most afraid of has no power over them? Can you imagine how free you could be if that anxiety that you're thinking, if this happens, it's going to be the end, it's going to be the end, it's going to be the end. Can you imagine how free that you'll feel if you experience it and find that you're still alive on the other side? This is the power of resurrection, not avoidance. This is life on the other side of the event horizon. This is gospel Easter story, resurrected life. So why is Easter so important? Why is it cause for celebration? Because at the end of the day, it is a message of hope. It's a message that even though we spend most of our lives running from these things that we are afraid of happening, the power of Jesus means that when we encounter them and when we surrender them to God and when we allow God to minister to it, those moments that we thought were going to be the end are actually just the beginning. Peter thought that if those insecurities come out, that would be the end of him, but it becomes the beginning of his story, and he becomes one of the great leaders of the church because he has followed Jesus across the event horizon and found life on the other side. So this morning for you, I want to bring you a message of hope. I don't know what the things you're avoiding are. I don't know what the black holes are for your life, but I come to you with a message of hope. That when Jesus meets with you, and when you allow Jesus to guide you and to fill you, and if you follow his life, those things that you thought were going to be the end, they no longer have any power. When Jesus comes and he takes you across that event horizon, you find that there is life on the other side. So this morning, as you reflect, think about whether the things that you're maybe running from or hiding from, and think about how Jesus might be able to bring you life on the other side of that. Because that is the power of Easter. There is life, real life, on the other side of the event horizon.
Thanks, Colin. That was a great message, and what a beautiful sunrise. That's all from us this morning, but we'll see you back again at 7 p.m.